Hi, and welcome back, everybody, to our TSC Alliance Lunch and Learn for the Step Forward to Cure TSC Walk, Run, Ride, Hybrid, Global, all of those things. It's so great to be back and back with my co-partner, Miss Lisa Moss. Welcome, Lisa. We missed you yesterday.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be back. You and Ryan did a great job. I got to watch the tail end of it. It was amazing and nice to be back with you, though.
Really good to have you. I love our banter. This is one of my favorite things that we do together all year. Yesterday, I neglected to say this is actually the 20th anniversary of Step Forward to Cure TSC. It's been really miraculous over the years. We've actually raised more than $17 million together, which has really helped advance both research and our community programs. It's been incredible.
It is. It's amazing. And this walk alone, we've been watching as everybody's been fundraising. And as of right now, or as of 5 minutes ago, we've raised $553,700, which is incredible. Unless someone just made a donation has proved me wrong. But so we're at like 65% of our goal. So really amazing. This is one of my favorite things, is watching the community come together, not only to share their pictures and videos and stories, but just how they engage their communities, their families, their friends to support them in this effort. And it's so cool. It's really cool.
You can watch the dial too if you go to stepforwardtocureTSC.org, and then there's a little dial that lets us know exactly where we are towards our fundraising goal.
Yeah,
I like literally hit it several times a day. Also wanted to let everybody know that tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time, we will be launching our virtual auction along with the walk. And we have more than 65 items this year. Some really great goods. Be sure to check that out. It's going to be awesome. You can link to it from the Step Forward to Cure TSC walk page. It's going to be awesome.
It's great. I always compete with Kari. We seem to have the same taste. And so I'm always competing with her on something. So I try to get my biz in first. So at least I have a fighting chance.
There's this piece of artwork I've been trying to get through every single auction. It's a Christy Klein specialty. So maybe this time I'll actually get it.
I got one last walk.
All right. So we first want to thank our national sponsors. I think Lisa's going to take us through that.
Absolutely. Definitely want to thank our national sponsors. We really can't do it without them. So thank you to Marinus Pharmaceuticals, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, Nobel Pharma, Ovid Therapeutics, UCB, Upshur Smith, Mass Mutual, Special Care, and Bridge Bio. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And speaking of UCB, we have somebody very special from there today.
We do indeed. Rebecca Burns is joining us from UCB, and we love to be able to connect with our partners in this way, to introduce them to the community and put a face behind the big name. So, hi, Rebecca.
Hey, how are you guys? I was just telling them before we went live, if my lights go off in the room, it's because we are being very eco-friendly and making sure our lights go off if no one's in the room. So I apologize if the lighting changes a little bit.
No problem. You'll just have to keep talking with your hands. And just to fill everyone in, so UCB's ambition is to transform the lives of people living with severe diseases. They focus on neurology and immunology disorders, putting patients at the center of their world. According to their website, UCB is inspired by patients, driven by science. UCB is continuously working to advance science and embrace new knowledge. They leverage scientific advances and skills in areas such as genetics, biomarkers, and human biology. They shared that patients inspire them to bring value through cutting-edge science, innovative drugs, and practical solutions so that they and their carers can go on with their lives. UCB continues to work on addressing key unmet needs in epilepsy, notably drug-resistant epilepsy, and disease modification. They continue cutting-edge research leading to the identification of novel anti-epileptic drug targets and validation of mechanisms that will pave the way for future therapeutic solutions for epilepsy patients. Today, we are joined, as I mentioned, by Rebecca Burns, who is Head of Medical Neurology, Epilepsy US. So thank you so much for joining us today, Rebecca.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm always excited to come and spend some time with you guys.
Well, we love having you.
We do. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at UCB?
Absolutely. So if I start kind of with a historical perspective of how I ended up in the medical field. So my background and training is as a pharmacist and as a scientist as well. So PharmD PhD, and what I found as I trained is that the passion that I had was really for patients, and that I really wanted to be aligned with a company who shared the same passion that I did. And that's actually what drove me to join UCB about 2.5 years ago. And so I was really joined by that patient focus and the science focus that they had. One of the things that I can say, and you've just given a wonderful introduction, a wonderful statements around UCB, I think at the heart of it is that at UCB, we recognize the importance of meeting patients and caregivers where they are. And so that was really what brought me to the organization. So since I've been here, I've been in the medical organization, and my role is to really make sure that as a company focused on epilepsy with a passion for patients, we're not only recognizing any gaps in care, but we're also recognizing where clinicians might need to know a little bit more about the science behind either our products or the disease state, and how we can essentially make sure we're meeting needs across the care paradigm.
Well, we really appreciate the time and effort and all of the ways that you work with the TSC Alliance. But tell the audience, can you tell them a little bit about taking a holistic approach toward working together?
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I think this is why I love coming to spend time with you guys, is because we really value the time we get to spend with organizations that share the passion for science and the passion for patients. So by us continuing to have this open dialogue, we are able to discover and co-develop and capitalize on the synergies that we're each bringing to the table. In fact, one of the things that I know over the past year or so we've discussed is the research opportunities, such as the natural history database that TSC has. That has been fascinating to learn about, and to be able to be a part of that has been critical, I think, for us to continue to develop the future together.
That's great. It's so important to do this work together, and you guys have been amazing to work with over the years. So it's so nice to hear the excitement in your voice about these things that we're so thrilled about too. Can you tell me what stands out about your interaction with the TSC Alliance?
Sure. I think I'll go back to the passion for patients as a number one. I remember the first time that we met, it was virtually, because I joined right before COVID started and everything had gone virtual. And so the thing that came across in that very first interaction was the passion behind everything that the TSC Alliance does. The excitement for collaboration, from a company standpoint, at UCB, we strongly believe in the value of collaborating together with the experts. And from a personal standpoint, that is also the way that I work as well, is that if we can come together and bring our minds together, we will gain so much more than if we did it alone. So the passion for patients, the excitement towards collaboration, and then the energy for finding solutions for patients. Those are the three things that really stick out to me about our ways of working together.
You have been such an amazing partner, we'll use that word, in moving new treatments forward. I loved in the introduction talking about finding drugs for medicine resistant epilepsy. And we're certainly committed to that too at the TSC Alliance. In fact, UCB was one of the original members of our preclinical consortium where we do that work together. Can you share why this has been an important and unique partnership for you?
Yes, absolutely. I've never, and it may exist and I haven't heard of it, but I've never been a part of this type of opportunity before. So I think it is very unique to TSC Alliance. And what this provides us the opportunity to do is to work together with advocates, academicians, and other industry professionals from large geographic areas across the world, just from all different corners actually, to work together, bringing again all minds together to collaborate on where the potential opportunities to impact TSC patients. And so it allows us to not only work together and figure out those path forwards, but to also test new targets. So we can test proprietary compounds, and those results are confidential. So that allows us to really explore all kinds of different avenues. And at the end of all of those pathways, lead to, if there's an opportunity to impact patients, the ability for us to work towards doing so.
Yeah, I think it's so important to really be starting way back in the drug development pipeline. And I found that very unique about working with UCB as well.
And it's definitely something that our community is always excited about learning about new treatments and new options. And so we are so grateful to this work and this focus that you have also. And you've brought so many things already to market to help our community. And we're so grateful. And, the next thing can't come soon enough, but we know it takes time. And and I'm wondering also, is there anything else you'd like to share with us about UCB that you'd like the TSC community to know?
Yeah, certainly. So, one of the things, there's a few programs that UCB has started from a historical standpoint that continue to be in place today that have really had the opportunity to impact patients, caregivers, and family members. One of them being the UCB Family Scholarship Program. That's an educational scholarship program that is available for application for individuals who have epilepsy, their family members, or their caregivers. So this has been ongoing since 2005. And since that time, UCB has awarded over $2.5 million in scholarships to over 500 people from either who were individuals who experience seizures themselves, their caregivers, or the family members of those who experience seizures. So from that program has really given us the ability to provide opportunity for the community that surrounds families and patients with epilepsy.
I know we get asked about scholarships all the time, and it's really nice to be able to promote your program and provide hope to those in our community who do want to further their education. So thank you so very much for doing that. So in closing, we have one question we're asking every one of our interviewees, which is, what 3 words would you use to describe the TSC community?
Let's see. I think I would say I'd have to start with passion, because I think that the passion, again, is one of the first things that I experienced as I have started working with you and the TSC community. Resilience. Mm-hmm. So the ability to bounce back. And I think the last one would be visionary. And the reason I say visionary is because, just for example, we talked about the preclinical consortium. Again, I don't see that across the board in any other place. And so I think that represents a real visionary perspective of how are we going to use this passion for patients that we have to help move the needle in the future. So I think visionary. So I think I'm going to go with resilience, passion, and visionary.
I love it. I love it.
Those are great. Those are great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And thanks for being with us, Rebecca, for always, being such a great supporter of the TSC Alliance and TSC community. We're so grateful.
Oh gosh, happy to. Thank you for all the work you do. The thanks definitely goes to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you. I have to say too, visionary goes to our science and medical team at the TSC Alliance, because they've really driven these visionary programs under the leadership of Steve Roberts, which has just been awe-inspiring. Awe-inspiring is all I can say.
Yeah, very true.
He's amazing. But we'll let you go, Rebecca, because we know that you have other things to do and finding new drugs for our community.
Thank you guys for having me today. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
We really appreciate it. So one of the ways we definitely bring together our wonderful industry partners, our very compassionate clinicians in our community is the World TSC Conference. This is done
Yeah.
only every 4 years, and we're really, truly, truly lucky that this is the year. And we weren't sure, actually, about a year ago, we were on the fence about whether we were going to be able to do this in 2022, but we feel very fortunate that there have been a lot of precautions put in place, and now we're able to move forward with our World Conference. How exciting. What's your favorite memory from a World TSC Conference?
My favorite memory. That's a tough question. I think I'm going to stall a little bit while I think and talk at the same time because I have a lot. But I think one of the things that I really found to be true is that the way people talked about world conferences before I attended one was the idea of them being sort of a life-changing experience and getting to not only learn about what's going on in TSC and TSC research, get some additional education, connect with the physicians and researchers that are, very highly regarded among all of us TSC parents, and then not ever having to explain anything. Like everybody, if there's a behavior, everybody knows what that is like, or if someone has a seizure, nobody's really freaked out. You just sort of deal with whatever you need to deal with. But I think my favorite memory, just like my single favorite memory, is from last conference, 2018. And it was when Chris Hockey and his band were playing, and they were performing live, and we had a dance floor, and a lot of the kids were on the dance floor, and he invited anybody up, any kid that wanted to come up on stage and sing into the microphone to come up on stage. And there must have been about a dozen kids that went up on stage, and they sang into the microphone, and the band backed them up. And it didn't matter what they sang, or if you knew what they were singing, the band just provided backup, and everyone in the room was cheering and so excited, and the kids had a blast. And it just was so I felt so emotional watching that happen, and it was really incredible. And I don't know if Chris Hockey knew how meaningful that was going to be when he invited everybody up. I think he did it for fun, and but it really meant a lot to the kids and to the families. And boy, it was amazing. It was really great.
Chris has this wonderful pulse on our community and really connects with adults, children, families, caregivers, parents. That deep compassion that both he and Sarah Jane have for our community really shines through, and in all of the ways that we've interacted with Hawk over the years. It's pretty incredible. Yeah. Well, for anybody that's interested in coming to this year's World TSC Conference, it's at the Hilton Anatole, July 28th through the 31st. Our early bird registration ends on June 1st, so be sure to check out registration. You don't want to miss it. For those that might be a little uncomfortable coming in person, we actually have live streaming, so you can attend virtually. We want this to be a really important and meaningful conference for everybody. So we hope that you'll check it out. You can link from our homepage where we have announcements about the World TSC Conference. So now we have another special guest. I'm very excited. We have one of our adult regional coordinators. So it's my turn to make the introduction. Iris Mustick is a senior clinical trials assistant for the International Maternal Pediatric Adolescent AIDS Clinical Trials, also known as IMPACT, Network Operations Center at FHI 360. She holds an MPH in health behavior and health education and a graduate certificate in risk science and human health from the University of Michigan, as well as a BS in movement science with a minor in medical anthropology. My goodness, Iris, you have more degrees than I could ever dream of. This is awesome. She has experience in global healthcare delivery and public health focused on access to HIV continuum of both care in domestic and global pediatric and adolescent populations. Iris is also an adult living with TSC and a TSC Alliance adult regional coordinator for Region 7. Everybody out there, listen, she covers Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, and Massachusetts. Welcome, Iris.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We're so happy to have you here and be able to interview you and share your story with everybody in the community. So I'm going to start with, when you were a kid, did you like school? And what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I loved school, but I really liked it because I loved learning, which is still true. But I really, I enjoyed learning new things, some subjects more than others. But yeah, I loved school all through school, which clearly, I mean, I stayed in school for a long time. But I actually, for the longest time, I wanted to be an actress. Up until around my junior year of high school, I did musical theater, I did improv. I wanted to be a professional actress. Eventually that shifted. I got more interested in science. And part of that is due to, I knew I had TSC all growing up, but as I became more independent and went to college, I started navigating the care myself rather than through the advocacy of my parents. I was just really interested in learning more about it, and just in science in general. So big shift from wanting to be on Broadway to the science world.
I share that background.
And sometimes I think it's interesting because when you have that creative side, it filters through in everything that you do. So, I think hearing you talk and hearing your background, it's so inspiring to hear about, everything you've accomplished and where you are now, and to be able to talk with you is great. And so tell us a little bit about your career path and if TSC played a role in, getting you to where you are now and what that looks like.
Sure. So I kind of alluded to a little bit as I got into college. I was really interested in science. And I read a book and took some classes that introduced me to public health. And I had never, today with COVID, I think everybody knows more about public health than we would all like to. But when I was first in college, I hadn't really heard about it before. I knew medical school or clinical care. And I heard about, this idea that you could work in the healthcare setting to impact whole, groups of people and communities, and to really do interventions and research at that larger scale rather than just at the individual patient-provider relationship, was really interesting to me. And so as I was thinking about going to graduate school, I did an internship internationally in Uganda. And one thing that has really stuck with me, and that kind of relates to how, my TSC diagnosis has played a role in my career path, is I was helping with some administrative work at an outreach, a kind of a rural health clinic. And there was a patient who there seemed to be some sort of communication barrier about, what was going on. And it turned out that what the parents were trying to tell the providers is that this child was having seizures. And there was one seizure medication available in the country, and that was it. And they gave, they had one bottle that gave them one dose and sent them on their way. And that is how it is. There's, it speaks to the larger issues with equity and access to healthcare. But, as someone who can relate to that specific type of clinical scenario and knowing the importance of the right anti-seizure medication, the right dose, the right follow-up, it really stuck with me. It was kind of a real kind of first time that I saw it first person perspective, what public health could really mean and what challenges exist. So I moved on into graduate school. I moved into qualitative HIV research, which again, kind of a jump in a different direction, but I was getting to really do qualitative research to learn about barriers to accessing the HIV continuum of care. So some connections there, mostly for trans and gender minority youth, and listening to what was really meaningful to them in, what prevents them from accessing care, what makes them want to access care. A lot of it is, how compassionate their providers are, which is also true for those in the rare disease community. And so some of those parallels continue to stick with me. I then took another jump and went into health information technology consulting, and was working with developing and implementing electronic health record systems, which was a different perspective, coming as a patient who was, years and years of paper records, electronic records from multiple different health systems. It really, I think, was more, I had kind of a real vested interest in making sure that the systems worked as well as possible for the patients and providers, because it's really meaningful to those of us who are kind of high utilizers in the healthcare setting. But then COVID hit, and life changes. I ended up where I am now at FHI 360 for the Impact Network, working in clinical trials to expand access to drugs for both pediatric HIV and tuberculosis. To a lot of drugs are already approved for adults, but providing that expanded access to children, and that's still something that the TSC plays a role in, as I'm sure you both know, and a lot of the listeners and viewers know. Vigabatrin is not approved in the United States for a very long time, and so that's a medication that I used, and I was able to see the barriers that exist to care when you don't have an FDA approved medication. And so that kind of is something that sticks with me as I work to, on these clinical trials, as it's something that really can impact patient care. So it's kind of long-winded, but that's.
I love it. Your
Yeah.
experience is so amazing with health equity and access, and really bringing home that Vigabatrin story. I'm, very fortunate to have been here and to work with our community to testify at that FDA advisory hearing that eventually led to the approval of Vigabatrin for use in infantile spasms and complex partial seizures. It's really inspiring to hear how that comes full circle, and how you yourself benefited from Vigabatrin. And so I can understand how this is so personal to you, and why you would take the career path that you did. And we are so fortunate to have you as a volunteer working with us. And I'd love to know, how did you find us? How did you get involved? Why did you decide to volunteer for the TSC Alliance?
Yeah, so this is another thing, kind of, the silver lining of COVID is we're all at home a lot on the computer, and that has allowed more time to kind of get involved virtually in different things. And so I thought about it for a while. As an independent adult, again, in the rare disease community in general, historically they've been underserved, and there's been a lot fewer kind of support programs and peer-to-peer support networks available. But in the recent years, the TSC Alliance has really been doing a lot to engage the independent adult population. And I had been seeing some of the, open forum calls, monthly topic calls for a while, and I wasn't sure if it was for me. And I said, what else am I doing on a Wednesday night? Why don't I just, I've been thinking about this, I'm curious. So I joined one of those calls. It was the first time I'd ever interacted with anyone else with TSC.
Wow.
And it was just a really meaningful experience. And that in conjunction with having moved around a lot over the past, to college and then various moves across the country, really navigating the transition of care from pediatric to adult, as well as other regions, made me want to really be able to have a support network and to also be able to support others in that journey. So I attended, I think, 2 of those meetings, and then I wanted to get more involved, and I reached out to Julie Scroggins, who was then working with that program, and she helped me get connected as an adult regional coordinator, and here we are.
It's really amazing, and thanks for recognizing the work that we're trying to do to better engage and provide meaningful services for adults living with TSC. And your input in that is critical in the direction that we move forward. I know that you came to DC in March, our first time back, really our first time back together as a community, and you attended the Volunteer Leadership Summit. Was there something from that meeting that stood out for you?
Yeah, so I think, as I kind of just mentioned, the adult monthly calls was my first time ever interacting with a group of people with TSC. The Leadership Summit was the first time I ever met anyone in person who had TSC, and that in itself is it can be a pretty hard to describe for people who may not have that type of situation, but it's can be a really profound experience just to meet people who may not have exactly the same experience as you do, but who are walking similar paths. And so that on its own is very meaningful. But I think from my role as a researcher, it was really inspiring to see the engagement of the industry partners and really engaging with the community, wanting to hear from the community, hear any concerns or questions, and get input as they work to in the drug development pipeline. And that is something that is really important in clinical research, and it's really great to see. So I think for me, it was really nice as a researcher to be able to see community members engaging with the industry partners.
I love to hear you talk like that. And it's you're absolutely right. It's so important. And the TSC community is so fortunate that we have, really exciting research going on and a lot of interest from, from industry partners who can change things and make things happen. And we have dedicated, clinicians and researchers. And in that regard, we're so fortunate. Obviously, there's a long way to go. And but it's exciting to see us move that needle forward, and to hear you talk about it from your perspective is fantastic. In terms of TSC research, what are you hopeful for in terms of what could be accomplished in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I want to acknowledge how far we've come since I was diagnosed. For those who for adults who are facing a new diagnosis, or for families who are facing a new diagnosis, in the time since I was, a small toddler being diagnosed, they've discovered both the genes associated with TSC, have a genetic test, discovered the mTOR pathway and mTOR inhibitors. Vigabatrin got FDA approval. The TAN checklist was developed, and the whole framework around, TSC-associated neuropsychiatric disorders, which was not really known when I was a kid. I think Kari might have mentioned this yesterday, but there are roughly 7,000 rare diseases, and only around 5%, so around 350, if my math's right, have one FDA-approved treatment. And we now, as of just recently, have 3. And that is huge. From a research perspective, moving from basic research and preclinical studies to clinical trials to the regulatory pathway, that is a huge accomplishment. And so I just I'm so excited that that's where we are. I think that's, the future has never really been brighter for TSC research. And I think that's really exciting. So for anyone who's facing a new diagnosis or, we've really come so far. In terms of what I'm hopeful for in the future, I'd say in the basic and translational research field, I'd like to see if there are any breakthroughs kind of beyond the mTOR pathway. We've been working with mTOR for, I think, around 20 years now, and it's been huge for our community, but I would love to see if there are other pathways that can be utilized to develop drugs to treat TSC, or repurposing drugs that are already existing that may actually work for TSC that would do a lot to advance care equity and global access. If there are other drugs that are on the market for other conditions that might actually work for TSC, that would be great to know. I also think that if we can identify more biomarkers, that would be huge. So especially, I think there's some research going on with biomarkers for autism. TSC gives such a unique opportunity for autism research because we know that individuals with TSC are at a higher risk of developing autism. So being able to do research to see what types of clinical indicators might predict if someone is more likely to develop autism would be huge for the TSC community and the larger autism community, as well as for LAM. I think there's still a lot we don't know about lymphangioliomyomatosis or LAM, and there's certain populations that are at higher risk of developing LAM than others, namely those assigned female sex at birth. And we think that there's a little bit potentially to do with some of the hormones there, but there's still a lot unknown about LAM. And so if we could find more biomarkers that help us understand why, I think it's somewhere around, the number changes. I think it's like 40%, 30 or 40% of those assigned female sex at birth who are going to develop LAM, why those 30 or 40%. So those, if we can find biomarkers for that, that would be great as well. I'm very excited about research in TAND. I think it's really a lot going on. The recently developed patient-reported outcomes portal that's part of the natural history database now is very exciting. I think patient-reported outcomes are able to give patients a voice that they often don't have in research, patients and their caregivers and loved ones. So I'm hopeful that information can be used to really help understand more. And hopefully maybe even expand beyond TAND at one point. Patient-reported outcomes in general are a really untapped resource. And then I think, as an adult with TSC, I'd like to see more research in the adult space. There's still a lot we don't know about TSC later in life, especially with things like mTOR inhibitors. We don't know what the clinical implications of long-term use of those are. There's just a lot we don't know, especially for those with TSC over 40, as well as in terms of reproductive health for TSC. I'm hopeful that we can learn more about any impacts of side effects of medications, or there's some risk factors associated with the various lung manifestations. I'd really like to see us get a better understanding of that, because the reproductive health sphere is really, there are gaps in research and gaps in clinical care. And so I think, I don't know what will come of that research, but I hope to, be able to go to the doctor one day and have them not say, well, there are 2 papers on this, they're both in rats. Um,
That would be
so
nice.
it would be nice.
I'm not a rat. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's happened to me. I mean, and bless them for even looking that far to find the 2 papers, one of which was a dissertation. You know, not all doctors will do that, but there are, some serious gaps in adult care and reproductive health care in general. So I'm hopeful that more research will come in those areas, and we'll get some answers to some questions, some clinical questions there.
Well, going back to first of all, I love listening to you talk about research and explaining the milestones from your point of view. What a testament. And thank you for sharing that for our community, and what it's meant to you. And yet, what are the unmet needs that we need to focus on for adults living with TSC? This time at our World Conference, we are definitely at least adding a panel discussion on reproductive issues for adults living with TSC and families living with TSC. And what does that mean? All the things you just talked about. What are the risk factors of LAM? What are the ways that you can carry a child? What about IVF? All of those things that are definitely impactful for our adult community. And thank you for giving voice to so many of those topics. We are very grateful for you, Iris.
Well, I'm grateful for you. I mean, the accomplishments that have been made so far would not, they're in large part due to the advocacy of the TSC Alliance and the TSC community, as well as the industry partners. So.
Well, then my last question for you, I know Lisa's got one more, but this is my last, which is, how has the TSC Alliance been most helpful to you?
Yeah, so I think, growing up, we were probably more helpful to my parents back when there were so many unknowns, but, indirectly helpful to me back when it was the National Tuberous Sclerosis Association, and they had, a conference available that my parents were able to learn more and direct, my doctors who didn't know anything about TSC to resources, and having the clinical guidelines to help, even with things like supporting medical necessity for various treatments, being able to have those guidelines all in one place from the doctors. But, as an adult, I kind of have talked about a little bit, just having the peer-to-peer support facilitated through the TSC Alliance, especially in COVID. I think it's been very easy for people to feel isolated, and really the kind of surge in recent years in programming for adults in the rare disease space in general, but specifically, the TSC Alliance has been doing a lot to really engage the adult and specifically independent adults community. And I think that as a younger independent adult who has recently navigated and is still navigating transitions of care, that can be really challenging. And having the resources, Ashley Founders is amazing. Joanne has, Nakagawa has been great in making those connections and trying to, be able to be seen at clinics. So there's so many different ways in which the TSC Alliance has been helpful, but I think, in the most helpful has been through just the connecting with others with TSC and having the kind of that support network.
Thank you for sharing that. I think you're right that the support network is so important, and it's so meaningful to hear from you that it's been helpful as well, because it is something that we have made a priority, but it's also it's so important to know that's a benefit too, and that's working. I know we can always keep working towards it and improving upon it, which we do have as goals, but it's really wonderful to hear the things that have been helpful for you. And it's there's so many words I could use to describe my feelings for this interview. This has been fantastic. I'm so glad we have it recorded.
Me too. I can't wait to go back and re-listen.
I feel like we could just show this parts of yours at a research meeting and say, here's what we need to do. This is it. It's all mapped out from one person's voice. This is what we need to do. But what I would love to hear, and this is what we've been asking everybody at the end of these interviews, is, are there 3 words you would use to describe the TSC community?
Yes, it's
And
such
what
a
would they
great
be?
question. And people have shared so many good words already. I'm trying to think of new words. So I think one that hasn't been used yet is cohesive. And I think, this community really comes together, be it, through social media. Someone asks the question and there's 6 answers in 3 minutes, and everyone's always jumping to kind of move mountains to help anyone. And really, the March on the Hill, everyone gets together and does what needs to be done to improve the landscape. And so I think cohesive is one word. I would say, kind of going along in with that, is empathetic. I think everyone can really, even though we, TSC is manifests differently in everyone, we all have some aspects of that path that we share. And for, everyone is always listening, providing a listening ear, providing support, providing resources, and just, whether or not they've been in exactly that person's shoes, I want to know that, we're all here for everyone. And so I think that empathy is a big one. I think resilient has been said by 2 people now. So I'm trying to think of a different one. I mean, it's definitely true. I would say, let's see, driven. It's very clear from everyone at the TSC Alliance and those in the community that we really are willing to do everything it takes to improve the experience of individuals and their families, and to improve the future. So those are my 3: cohesive, empathetic, and driven.
Thank you. That's
Love it.
great. I love it too.
I really love it. We used to say that we fund research, and now we say we fund and drive. So it goes very much to the heart of what you just shared as well. Iris, thank you so much for joining us today for such a meaningful, heartfelt, inspiring interview. We're so grateful to have gotten your point of view and your experiences and your hopes for the future. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
you.
so
This
much
has
for
been
having me.
the best hour of my day for sure. And it's early, but I know that nothing's going to top this. So this was wonderful to have you on today and to get to talk with you more. I stick to what I said earlier. You are so inspiring, and I'm so, as a TSC mom, it's so meaningful to me to talk with you and hear your story. You are a role model, whether you realize it or not. And I'm so grateful for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. Thank you, Kari and Lisa. It's been great to be here, and I look forward to seeing you both in Dallas.
Can't wait to see you in Dallas. It's going to be great. All right. Make sure you go out and walk, run, ride, or just pick one this weekend. Thank you so much, Iris.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Wow.
I know.
That was, I have no words. That was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary.
I completely agree. She should be sitting in these seats.
She should be sitting in these seats. She should be sitting in my seat. She was amazing.
She was. I loved hearing how she she put in such a very clear and concise
Yeah.
way about the importance of research and what she hopes to achieve and what's been accomplished in her own lifetime, and her feelings about the TSC community, and how amazing that she never met anyone in
I know.
person until
The pandemic until
March.
right.
March
Oh,
of
in
this-
person,
yeah,
right.
March of this year.
Wow, it's
In
wild.
person. And I hope she's prepared for the World Conference. There's a lot of people there,
That's
but
right.
it's going to be great. It'll be great.
Which is why it's one of the most prolific things that we do, really bringing together the global community and that opportunity to find your people.
yes,
It's
yes,
life changing.
I completely
Life
agree.
changing.
Well, and I think one of the best things we do to help people get acclimated to the World Conference is we have meet and greets for all different groups on the first day of the conference. So when you show up and 1,000 of your new best friends are there, you can kind of find a little bit of like bite-sized interactions with those groups of
That's right.
people, and so it's really nice to have those meet and greets. And I can't wait to talk to Iris about what her thoughts are about her first World Conference.
I think it's awesome. One unique thing that UCB is also doing this year with the World Conference is sponsoring our Spanish gathering. So this is an all in Spanish meet and greet dinner, a real session on TSC 101. We offer this to the local community at no cost for the Spanish speaking people in Dallas, Fort Worth area, or anywhere near there that would like to come and learn and have it in Spanish. And UCB is a real champion for that kind of access. So we're really grateful to them for helping make that possible.
Yeah.
Okay, Lisa, one more time. Our national sponsors are.
Yes, thank you very much once again to Marinus Pharmaceuticals, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, Nobel Pharma, Ovid Therapeutics, UCB, Upshur Smith, Mass Mutual Special Care, and Bridge Bio. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. We are so grateful. I just want to put in a plug for the next 2 days. Tomorrow, Jazz Pharmaceuticals with Tim Hollick and the amazing Greg Grunberg, along with Emily Fan, a beautiful classic pianist who played last year at Comedy for a Cure. She is a wonderful woman and one of our future leaders. Please don't miss that. It's going to be incredible. Thursday, we have Bridge Bio that's going to be with us, and Purnima Senwal, who has a young child with TSC, who's going to tell us about her journey as well.
Can't wait.
Right. It's awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.